Hi, I'm Tracy Cumming, and I will be covering the topic of incentives as part of the IUCN guidelines for privately protected areas. I'll be taking us through 7 principles and touch on numerous best practices for these principles. Before we delve into the principles and best practices, let's start with what we mean when we say incentives. An incentive can be anything that provides motivation for a certain behavior. In the case of PPAs, some examples of different types of incentives include recognition of landowners' efforts, supporting landowners' conservation ethic through education and awareness, management assistance, improved marketing opportunities and access to markets for green products, or financial incentives, including direct payments, tax breaks, and green subsidies. A lot of careful consideration should go into designing and implementing incentives. There are many things to consider, from both the demand side, namely what incentives would appeal most to landowners, and the supply side, what incentives are affordable, practical, fair, and sustainable to offer, and work within the relevant legal and institutional framework. Incentives should be tied to achieving the desired conservation outcomes and should be clearly understood by all parties. They should be linked to the ongoing management and performance of the PPA, and clear guidance should be provided on the eligibility for accessing incentives. Eligibility for incentives can be more nuanced than simply having PPA status. You can design degrees of incentives. In Australia, for example, incentives are greater for areas of higher biodiversity importance. In South Africa, landowners are eligible for greater incentives when they commit to a longer duration of protection and have more land use restrictions on their land. It is useful to provide a mix of incentive options. Different landowners are motivated by different types of incentives based on their own needs and their own values. This leads me to the fourth best practice. The organization running a PPA program does not need to be providing all of the incentives themselves. Different types of incentives can come from a range of different sources. Partnerships with NGOs, government programs, and corporates could offer incentives such as mentoring, recognition, or training on specific land management issues like fire control. Address disincentives that landowners may face for establishing or managing PPAs. Try to understand the barriers that landowners face in creating and managing PPAs and see if these can be addressed by specific incentives. For example, a landowner may feel daunted by the prospect of actively managing a protected area and may be encouraged by hands-on management support and technical know-how. Alternatively, a landowner might be fine with that, but might feel that they lack the skills to access a market for green products or ecotourism and need support for their PPA in that way. Here again, support that is offered on this particular topic could be an incentive for that landowner. While incentives should be designed early on, it is best to continue to listen to feedback from landowners and be willing to adjust incentives or introduce new incentives accordingly. Principle 2. Incentives should encourage both PPA establishment as well as long-term governance and management. Creating incentives for establishing a PPA might require different incentives than those that help ensure long-term management. For example, landowners might be motivated by a conservation ethic to establish a PPA. However, they might be incentivized to remain committed in the long term by the relationships that they build with other PPA owners or the support that they are offered by conservation agencies. Whatever the type of incentives, incentives aimed at encouraging long-term commitment must be sustainable over the long term. Perverse incentives are incentives that are developed with another goal in mind, such as stimulating agriculture or energy production, but have unintended negative consequences for, in our case, biodiversity. For example, there could be very real unintended economic penalties for converting land from primary production to conservation, such as increased land taxes for not developing the land, or a loss of agricultural subsidies when switching from more traditional commercial practices to greener practices. Incentives can be designed to counter this, such as the tax incentives available in South Africa, or the greening of the original subsidy, for example, the greening of agricultural subsidies to encourage better land stewardship within the agricultural space. In reality, the negative impact of perverse incentives on PPA landowners could be far greater than any positive incentives that can be offered, and identifying and addressing perverse incentives, or the elephant in the room, may be fundamental to the long-term success of a PPA program. Non-financial incentives can be equally, if not more important than financial incentives to some landowners. Feeling part of a community, being recognized for benefiting biodiversity, and having strong relationships between landowners, NGOs, and government conservation authorities can be incredibly important motivators. If this type of incentive is provided, the right teams and resources need to be put in place in order to work well with landowners, to build positive relationships, and to sustain these relationships over time. Direct management and technical support to landowners can be a powerful motivator, combining the benefits of cost savings with creating a sense of belonging to a larger community and improving landowner know-how. This support can come from a range of actors, as I mentioned earlier. For example, in New Zealand, Covenanters clubs offer peer mentoring and field trips, and members collectively work on each other's land. PPAs might have different income-generating opportunities than those of state-protected areas, for example, by appealing to a different ecotourism market. PPAs may also be in a better position to retain income than state-owned protected areas, where income such as gate fees is often channeled into general state funds. For PPAs with the potential to generate income, marketing assistance can be an effective incentive. PPAs that have income-earning operations can benefit from the added marketing value of formal recognition as a PPA, giving the land stronger green credentials. The Long Run, for example, is a global network of tourism businesses which support PPAs in a range of ways, including providing marketing support and recognition. Lastly, financial incentives remain strong motivators for both the establishment and long-term management of PPAs. These can take the form of direct payments, such as through payment of ecosystem service schemes, financial incentives, and leveraging matching funds. I'll go through best practice related to financial incentives. 1. Seek opportunities for leveraging additional funds, such as donor funds, to complement PPA investment. Land that has PPA status may help to provide credibility to projects that are seeking additional donors to invest in conservation. Direct payments can be used to compensate landowners for actual costs or for opportunity costs. Some good examples are payments for ecosystem services and purchases of conservation easements. In the USA, for example, the Nature Conservancy occasionally purchases conservation easements when the landowner cannot benefit from the related tax rates and the land is considered to be of high biodiversity priority. 3. Financial incentives should encourage additionality. Increased financial resources could be channeled to the PPA if it provides ecosystem services beyond biodiversity conservation, such as climate change adaptation and mitigation, or catchment management of an important water supply. If this is a possibility, the initial PPA agreement or covenant must be designed to allow for these multiple funding streams. For example, in New Zealand, landowners with covenants on their land are able to benefit directly from carbon trading schemes related to regenerating forests, and in some catchments can also benefit from nutrient trading schemes to protect freshwater quality of lakes and rivers. Fiscal incentives should be developed cooperatively between government finance departments, other relevant government agencies, NGOs, and landowners to ensure that the incentives fit appropriately into fiscal regulations and can be effectively implemented and managed, as well as make sense for the types of landowners that have PPAs. Fiscal incentives should be designed to be applicable to the highest number of PPAs. For example, designing tax incentives that may only be realized by a few high net worth individuals and not other landowners with similar biodiversity importance can be problematic. In these cases, other incentives need to be made available. I hope you found this information useful. All of us are driven by a complex array of incentives and disincentives. I bet you can point to your own motivating reasons for listening to this webinar. Understanding what really motivates landowners and finding a way to tap into and support that motivation is a key element to effective and sustainable protected areas. Thank you.